Welcome to the SuperHero Conversations, a podcast saga with innovation leaders who will be at Supernova, the #1 tech innovation event in Benelux, happening in the end of March 2025 in Antwerp, Belgium. I'm your host, Domenik Djatsuk, and joining me today is the co-founder and the CEO of Deliverect, Zhong Xu. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, Domenik.
Thank you. So, Zhong, I would really like to begin with the first stepping stones. How it all started, and tell me, what were the first entrepreneurship ventures, the first entrepreneurship steps that you made in your childhood?
Yeah, I think it's quite important, where you come from, because I think people always look afterwards to certain success and think it's happened overnight. I learned by now, personal experience as well with my and other entrepreneurial friends. Overnight success does not exist. Most of the time, it takes a decade. In my case, it took 2 decades. So I've been always in the restaurant tech world, but I started actually very young. At age 16, I had a web agency for creating website for Chinese restaurant, right? And the reason why was really, due to my father, right? He has a quite amazing story. He moved back then in '89 from China to Belgium. Back then, China was not as sophisticated or powerhouse as now. It was the first generation after Cultural Revolution, really want to have a better life. And so he came here to do a PhD. But as back then, people didn't want to pay people out of China, as was a bit tougher. He needed to survive by, working, in the weekend. So he was literally washing dishes in a restaurant and so on. And to make a long story short, what happened is one of the restaurant owner asked him, "Hey, can you help me to run my restaurant digitally?" And so he wrote a software using a book, learned C++ in 30 days, and created a point-of-sale company for Chinese restaurants. And you can imagine growing up as a kid of a dad like that, he was always pushing me, "Hey, you should work, you should do something," pushing me out of the comfort zone. And so when I turned 16, he was like, "You really need to do something." So I learned to code, to create websites using Dreamweaver and so on. And that's my first venture, right? And why is that important? Since then, I learned that the only inhibitors in your success or life is yourself, right? So we are very, as human, we always are in certain comfort zone. And it's really hard to go beyond it. And there's a lot of reason why you can't, but it's all in your head, right? So once you are used to getting out of it, then you can do bigger. You can question yourself, why not? Why can't I? What's the reason? And often there's no reason. And that has a big impact on me.
And if you could tell me, what was the mindset when we were 16 and doing the first the websites for the Chinese restaurants? What is the meaning? What was the driver behind that?
I think I was scared shitless, right? As a young kid, almost you think, "Hey, I can't do this." Right. And so, he took me to these his customers, and then they were like, "Hey, let them try. You can do it." Even if it's not a lot of money, you learn and hone your skills and actually see the gratitude of, people when you created something, right? And once you have done a couple, you just master it, and then it becomes a second nature, right? Similar to becoming doing website. My father even enrolled me as a translator in Bekaert. It's one of the bigger companies in Belgium, and they were looking for, I think, a 28-year-old, master graduate to do Chinese to Dutch translations. And he said, "Look, you should apply." I'm like, I really thought I would go to jail because, like, if I apply for something that, is asking for 28-year-olds, I'm 16, am I completely lying? And the reality is, when I applied, I was the best candidate, right? So I got the job and did that translation job. And again, it showed, the comfort zone is limiting us, because I would never take that step because I thought it would never happen and it would be, super hard. And the reality is, once you try, actually you can succeed. And that taught me a lesson of, hey, just push your boundaries, try it. Worst case, it fails, right?
How do you feel about the parents impacting the lives, the future lives of their children? Do entrepreneurs are born, or you can kind of get that skill?
I think it's a duo, right? You need to have that intrinsic motivation to want to go. You need to have that drive. I think that's inherent. But then a lot of other skills are, I think taught by the parents. And that's why you look. Not all entrepreneurs are immigrants, but you do see quite, especially in the US, where immigrants have a higher level of being an entrepreneur and succeeding. It's just because the grit you have is a bit bigger, right? If you have a very comfortable life growing up, it's amazing. But once you have tough moments, can be economic, can be personal. I think, when you get older, it's tougher to overcome. But if you had I would say sometimes a tougher childhood, it makes you a bit stronger, right? So the degree of pain you can handle is just bigger. And look, at the end of the day, starting a company, being on the entrepreneur journey, it's not always easy. The highs are very high, the lows are very low. And so especially in these lows, you need to have the grit to survive. You need to be able to say, hey, so be it, we'll go through it and fight for it, right? If you don't give up, you're going to win.
Let's talk about Deliverect. Could you give us an overview? Maybe people that don't know what is Deliverect, maybe you could explain and give us some numbers behind it.
Yeah, look, Deliverect is my last company. I started that in 2019. So now it's a bit over 6 years old. What we really do is we are the order management, digital order management system for restaurant and retailers, right? So we help restaurants as a Burger King, a KFC, and so on sell on, for example, digital channels as Uber Eats, Deliveroo, DoorDash, on their own website, on their kiosk, on social media, Instagram, and so on. And in the last couple of years, we grew that company quite big, because today we power over 60,000 customer locations in 50 markets. And the team has grown to almost 500 people with 13 offices around the world, right? And I think what most makes us proud is, not only having these customers, is what we do for them. Especially during COVID, we were the only source for them to survive, to make money. But today, I think we are nearing almost in total 1 billion orders processed, right? And 1 billion orders means a lot for these restaurants, as for them, all the income is now coming from digital. So we're powering that evolution.
Maybe you could give us some financial kind of aspects also. What is your approximate ARR? What is your kind of return on investment, and so on?
Look, I think we're still in fast growth, right? Mm-hmm. We the billion orders. I think just this year we will have processed more than $11 billion for these restaurants. I think ARR, we look like different than counting these bigger numbers or looking at gross profit. I think we're gonna get to 100 in the next 12 months. So that's really interesting as well, especially for such a short time. And what we're really wanting to do is help the restaurant more around the world, because the total addressable market for restaurant and convenience doing digital is enormous, right? Because we all need to eat and we all need to have stuff delivered to our home. So it's just the start, and we're very excited about it.
Fantastic. So I do believe that the COVID gave you a push start, a kind of if you were the one of the only companies that were delivering that service. It's really fascinating how you leverage that crisis into your own benefit.
I would say it's one of the biggest, I think, lessons for entrepreneurs besides having the grit is mastering timing, right? Timing is because this is my third company, and the last company was also in restaurant, but that went public even. And, when we started Deliverect, actually was proving to people that it's not luck. People look at entrepreneurs and there is always luck involved, right? But I think a lot of it is under control, right? Why it's not luck is if you're starting a company, you can or wait or you can scale quick, right? What do I mean with that? Often these days you see startups, people starting really wanting to raise capital. Why? You don't even have product market fit. You don't have the customers. Is the market really ready for it? Should you just wait and build a product to a certain degree and then go scaling? For us was different, right? Because during COVID, we started in 2019, so it was almost a year prior to COVID. So timing was perfect to create a product. The original goal, I didn't want to scale again a bigger company. I actually want to keep the team small to maybe 20, 30 people. But then when you see a wave like COVID, where the whole industry is transforming, and what normally would have taken 10 years to make that evolution to fully digital sales happens only in 12 to 24 months. Then you need to make the decision of, hey, we're going to scale. Hence, we raised a lot of capital, over 250 million in a very short time, to then start offices around the world, to making sure that we can help these customers around everywhere.
You mentioned 500, almost 500 people are in Deliverect now. To all the founders listening to us, maybe you could give us a little advice. So you started with, how many people did you start initially?
We were initially with 2, but then we have 4 co-founders. So we, started very quickly. I think with 4. I think in end of 2019 we were around 15 people, and then 2020 we were only, I think, that was pre-COVID, 30 or 40 people, and then the year after we were already 300 people, and so on. So it's especially in the years of where everything accelerated, we raised almost an army of people and started offices, right? And it was quite surreal because, we even needed to hire, someone for learning and development to onboard these people. She came from actually a hardware cafe, so she was used to opening hotels. So we had classical rooms where it was remote, but then 20 people joining at the same moment, getting onboarded every day in the company. So it's a very surreal time, but having the right culture, having the right process allows you to do that, right? It's still painful, but it's doable.
So you grew from 4 co-founders to 500 people in just in less than 6 years. I do find it fascinating. Could you give us advice on what should founders focus on? For example, from 1 to 10, 10 to 100 people, and 100 to 500 people. What is the focus of the founder?
I think it's people is one side. I think that's very much driven by culture. I think take your time if you're starting a new company, take really your time for your first 10, right? The first 10 people are the foundations of everything, right? These are the people that's going to define the culture. Is going to be the ones that's going to hire each of these 10 people going to hire another 10, so going to bring to that 100. So it's really crucial to take your time with that and focus on people with the right mindset, and then skill, right? Skill is important, but start really with the mindset. And if you nail that, then you can go to that next phase, right? And why is that important? I see a lot of people just starting, focus on, hey, I need people with certain skills, but then they forget the mindset, right? And why is that? You need to still, even if it's someone seasoned, you need someone that is hungry, that believes they can make the bigger difference, is naive enough to try, right? A prime example, when we scaled all these regions, one of the offices was in Australia, but back then it was completely locked down. So we asked, certain of our sales guys that was, maybe 25, 26 is, would you mind to, run Australia, but I'm from Bali, work 6 months there, right? They were like, why not? Let's go. And they grew that continent. If you were to ask similar to someone of, with respect, I'm also 40, but 30, 40-year-old with a long career already, they're like, yeah, Zhong, that's not possible. We don't have an entity. How do we going to do this? How do we, invoice? They only see problems, right? So you want people that have the intrinsic, nature of seeing solutions and just want to go for it and just do it.
Wow. I think that all of the founders and all of the investors should take a notebook and make kind of notes by listening to this conversation. So you mentioned the mindset, and I know you're a big fan of culture inside the company. I find it that a lot of founders talk about the culture, but if you go inside the company, you don't really feel it as an external person. Yeah. Could you explain, what does a company's culture mean to you?
I think people think it's in the waters and it's just organic. When you're with 10 people, it's organic because whatever you do, you can create these rituals. You can talk, take them out, have drinks, you feel it, right? But once you go beyond that, once you reach 50 people and above, it dilutes quite heavily because you can't bring your vision, the way of working to all these people. And so it's very important, very quickly on to invest in that and create actually the processes, the handbooks, the rituals, and write it all down. So for us, when we started Deliverect, and people always thought we were crazy, when we're even, with 2, the first we did, and she's now our current chief people officer, we asked Ingrid back then, hey, can you write down and help us define the culture? And she helped us by doing that using Legos. So we were puzzling with Legos to look at how the org would work, how interaction would work, how the team structure would work. And why is that important? You need to write it down before you scale. Because, in the last company where, with Lightbeat, that's a public, we only started working on culture after 100 people. And we never fixed it. Because after that, teaching people what they should do, it's not possible anymore, right? If you upfront onboard them and give them the handbook, say what the rituals are, that works. And to give you a concrete example, like we have a lot of rituals, right? So for example, every Friday, at 5 p.m., we have a company on hand where it's done by the team for the team. And they go over all aspects of the company. Why are we doing that? To keep the cutdowns going bi-weekly, because pace is defining for startups, right? They also get drinks afterwards, wherever they are to, allow that social aspect. Every month, for example, independent of result, they will have, a celebration. The difference is if they achieve targets, they probably can go to a very fancy restaurant or go out. If they don't, they need to maybe buy some pizzas or kebab, right? But then you still celebrate these moments, right? Up to where we set up quarterly moments where we do feedback with people, right? On all layers, right? And you need to set that up because, you would assume people know how to talk to each other. They don't. Even on our C-level, we take the time. I call those kumbaya moments to sit around and literally give each other very harsh and direct feedback. And if you do a lot of these smaller things, it's compound magically for your company to do the right thing and having the right culture, right? But it's not in the waters. You need to write it down, write a handbook, write a process. It's almost engineering. Yeah, people think people management is fluid. No, you can engineer it. And that's going to help you to scale.
So you basically take the culture of the company and slice it open as if it was a piece of code you write, and a piece of project, and you actually work on it. I find it fascinating. You mentioned KPIs and you mentioned the kind of rewards that people get. How do you measure the success of the company?
I would say it's different phases, right? I think, if you're a SaaS company, I think there's different phases. If you're starting, it's, the 0 to 1, it's quite hard. It's really about getting the team aligned, getting them motivated, finding the first customer. It's founder-led sales. You do whatever it takes, right? I think 1 to 10 is already different, where you say, hey, now I need to not do it only myself, find a team around me that can scale. And then 10 to 50, again, is a different beast because it then becomes where you can't just do things directly anymore. We need to build organization around it. And then further on, it's really just KPI driven. I think what I look at daily level is, I know quite well the high level numbers. I think, you don't need to be a financial wizard as a founder, but I think it's very crucial if you're leading a company that you know your numbers, knowing what the driver reason is. And then once in a while, walk around and dive deep, right? Talk to people that are working with you, what's going on in life. And you're going to pick up a lot of smaller things that actually will reflect in those numbers. And then you can make these smaller changes, right? I think these things are important. And for the rest, I think also as a founder, you need to know when to involve and when not, right? I'm more entrepreneur than a manager. So, in peacetime, I try to not to get too much involved because probably I'm going to rush things too much. But in wartime, then you just need to make, decisions, go what they call today in founder mode, just make the decision, move quick, and, make sure the changes are happening rapidly, right? Because waiting is what's going to kill you. You do not have time. Yeah. Whatever you want to do it today. Don't do 2 weeks. Don't wait for meetings. Just make it happen. Right.
And if you could share to us some of the KPIs that you find meaningful that you, for example, monitor weekly.
Yeah, I think, look, for us, it's we're a SaaS company. So what's our top line AR? That's important. What's our committed AR is important because that gives you a forecast what the sales are, right? other super important thing is, people measure churn, but churn is convoluted. We measure net retention rate. So we really look at every cohort of our customer base and see how much they grow on a dollar value, right? So now we're above 120%. It's best in breed and in class. And so we measure that rigorously where, it's a combination of everything. But that's on the company metrics. I think you go to markets, the traditional stuff is you measure on cost acquisition, lifetime value. But more important for people running sales organization is looking, for example, to magic ratio, where you look at the expenditure of last quarter vs what you add net ARR this quarter and see what that ratio is, right? So there's a lot of things where I think today, especially in SaaS, is so well documented, you can benchmark yourself against it, right? If you really want to look, I think, Iconic has an amazing website where you can benchmark, all sort of things across the, top quartile public as well private SaaS companies, right? And so I think you need to take it with a grain of salt, but there is some truth about, hey, what growth rate should I be in? What retention rate should I be in? What's the AR per FTE and so on, right? There's nuances, but you can look at what's happening, right?
And how do you measure engineers? I think this is the question many companies ask. I think engineers are the holy grail of all of the kind of tech companies, but it's really hard to measure because some things take time, some things take creativity, some things are not measurable by KPIs. How do you measure the Deliverect's engineers?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of OKRs. There's soft things where we want them to be creative, solving problems, ship code, ship features. But at the end of the day, I think it's still, if you're a business, you can link any initiative to an AR, right? Or if it's very start at the beginning, it's number of locations or customers live, right? So instead of looking at monitoring value, is the crucial thing is the product being used, is a product market fit. And to do that, it's, seeing the usage is crucial. And I think it's like, starting a company, right? If I would start a new company, my first goal, in the first year would be, hey, I need to launch this, and within probably 3 months, I need to get to at least 10 customers, right? By end of year, I would love that product to have at least 1,000 locations live, right? 1,000 customers. I think that's a measurement. If you're nearing that, that's okay. If we, after a year, only have 100, 200, probably that's not going to work. And then you're going to stop the product, right? So it is driven by, customers. And then after that 1,000, then you're going to measure again on revenue, what revenue are we bringing, right? Because I do think it's crucial to measure like that. Because engineers as well, product managers say, but I worked hard. Well, but you still should be result driven. You're creating a product that people use. So if you're just measuring yourself a line of code, it doesn't say anything. Especially these days where you can generate a lot with AI, it's really about, what's the result with your end customer, right? Ship it quicker, let them use it. That's the key metric.
From what I hear, sales are really important for you and the number of customers. Maybe you could, share some of the insights of how do you do sales, of what are the most effective kind of ways to do sales in 2025 when there's so much abundance of the information. How do you do it?
Oh, that's a really broad question. I think it depends, what company you are, what customer you're targeting, right? In the case of Deliverect, we're doing more B2B and more enterprise. And that's why you do need salespeople, right? If you are doing more B2C, smaller customers, I think you can do a lot of more product-led growth. You can, just do mass sales outbound and convert them by, high-velocity sales channels. In our case, I think it's very much because we do enterprise, we need to have local approaches. And hence, we have a lot of offices, right? Because we have people in local, bigger cities that work with these local enterprises. And it's very much relation-built selling. Right. I think especially on enterprise, it's not, the product needs to be good. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to buy just from the company. They're going to buy from a person. And that person is the one that they have a relationship on. So you do need to invest in that. I think also this is the mishap of a software engineer or product guy. I was that as well. I always thought if we make the best products, they will come and we will grow. And I will win. It's the biggest misconception. The only factor that will allow you to win is how big your distribution network is. So I think that's also a common trait that I see between first-time founders or us, second and third-time founders. It's always the second and third-time founders you see, they focus on distribution and not just on product. Product need to be good, but that's table stakes, right? But if you have a distribution, that's how you win. I'll give you a concrete example. Last company, when we started, we were an iPad point of sale. Now it's very logical to be iPad to iPhone, but we started in 2010. So iPad was just, released. And our distribution channel that really was innovative is, if you think about it, before, if you want to sell software or point of sale to a restaurant, you need to drive there, you need to put a big computer there, you need to install it. And we launched it to the App Store. Yeah. And that's a fast grow distribution network, because back then, there were millions of iPads sold and everyone was downloading it. So even if we were, two guys, we could reach customers around the world and distribute it. So that's key. Now with Deliverect, it's different, where we have a lot of partners, right? When we started, we said, hey, how do we get our software in 50 countries everywhere? Well, we set up strategic partnerships with point of sale companies around the world. So instead of us trying to just sell it, why don't we partner up, 10, 20 of these companies a month and let them distribute it? And once you're in place, that's how you win, right? And the software doesn't matter that much. It needs to be good, but it's the go-to-market strategy that defines the difference.
So your main sales come from the distributors. You're not acquiring the customers directly.
Now we do. I think it's always the phase, right? So starting, I think you need to, once you're small, you need to really think, how am I going to sell it? Because hiring salespeople costs a lot and takes a long time. And if you want to do it at mass, you need a lot of them. So it's very inefficient. So focus first, if I'm a founder, is I'm going to sell myself, but more thinking about, can I not find partners that are going to expand my sales? Is there a flywheel effect? And we're not the only one. If you think about it, for example, Odoo, why are they successful today? Because before, is very much today they have a massive distribution network where every reseller is selling their ERP, implementing service-based companies. Similar to a lot of others, right? So nailing that initial distribution allows you to get a lot of sales, especially in the first event of growth. And then after that, you can then build your go-to-market team, go up market, finding these enterprise customers. But you should not do that from the get-go, because it's founder-led sales. And if you're alone or with 2 or 3, you need to find the channel that's going to give you the most of customers.
Wow. And if you look at sales, I feel like sales have not really changed from the 20th century. You basically have a person who talks well, and he sells it to another person that wants to buy it. Do you feel that there is a shift, with AI that will happen in the 21st century in terms of sales?
I think it depends. It's still a lot of sales is relationship based. I think where AI can help is the implementation side. It's going to go easier. The proof of concept is going to be easier. Maybe the decision making will be more objective than biased. But at the end of the day, especially in an enterprise, again, people are buying from people. Similar to software, I think AI is going to be all-encompassing. Everyone's going to adopt it, but it's going to be available for everyone, right? Today, there's a lot of models. Everyone can use it. So it's more about, where the time of not software to SaaS is you just need to make sure you are on that playing field. But then the difference maker is going to be still the people on the relationship side. Because everyone's going to have that in the AI side. It's not where it's going to be owned by a couple and you cannot develop it, right? Maybe in the beginning, it was really hard. But today, I think AI is so commoditized that, and especially with these cheaper models that, every engineer should be using it and working on it. And it becomes commodity.
Wow. Let's talk about Deliverect's operations inside. Maybe a lot of the founders could learn from the way you do things. Maybe you can give us 2 kind of reasonings. What is your take on remote work and reoccurring meetings?
Remote work, that can work, but I think you need to make that a clear distinction. It's a different operating model, right? I think you need to choose. And it starts also with preference of your founder, preference of way of working. Because if you do fully remote and you go fully remote, but then you still need to have interaction moments. You can't, do that without bringing the team together. Probably then you're going to still have a quarterly by team, and then at least, if not twice a year or at least a year where you bring everyone together to celebrate these moments and co-work. So you need to create still these connection points, right? Without that, it won't work, right? So fully remote is possible, but you can do that. I think for us is we still like the office vibe. We like, maybe we are old school, maybe restaurant. We like to bring people together, hash out ideas and set that up. I think that's still quite interesting, but it's a preference. I think both can work. Of course, if you have talent issues, the benefit to us, because we have so many offices, we still can hire these talent around the world. If you're very limited in that, then I think remote could help you with talent, right?
And what about meetings? There's strong kind of a feeling about meetings being a waste of time. What is the culture of meetings inside Deliverect?
I think we do still have recurrent meetings. We try to limit that, right? I think more and more we are trying to, set moments where instead of meetings where it's a lot of in smaller groups, we do meetings in big groups, right? So we have a leadership forum, and then all the leaders are there, and that's once a week. And why is that? It's you want to have unfiltered information, right? Often the problem is if it's miscommunication when you have a lot of people. If you're the founder or the C-level in whatever department, you talk to your VP and whatever, the message always get diluted and people don't hear what is real, right? And if you do it in group, it's quite impossible to not have heard what you said. And making that where everyone has the right info or the same info is quite crucial, right? Because else there's a lot of interpretation. For the rest, I do think, if you have your people that work with you, you could do one. That being said, I think if people are at their level, they should not need it. You should obviously talk to each other in a casual way, but do you really need the recurring weekly? I doubt that. I think if you are highly effective, do it in group, provide info, and when there's something you need to, you do ad hoc meetings.
I feel like you're this kind of fully in, all in entrepreneur. You work a lot. You mentioned, that you're fully kind of submerged into the company, and there is kind of this notion that the first, for example, 10 people, they feel like it's their baby. They work 12 hours a day, minimum, and they work weekends and stuff like this. But if you feel like you already hire people, and the people, for example, 50 plus or 30 plus, they already feel it as a job rather than a baby, rather than a passion. What is your what is your feeling towards it, and do you kind of get it, and what are your thoughts on that?
I think as you grow, you can't expect everyone that joins you have the same level of work ethic as a founder, right? Because for you, it's more than a job. It's a calling. It's a purpose. You do hope people joining have the same mindset. I want to go for it. What you should do is break the teams smaller. Often when things doesn't move, it's because the team is too big. They're not creating that vibe of winning, making progress, busy. People are not, when they're unhappy, it's not because, it's actually not because of the work. If there's a lot of work, that doesn't define if they're happy or not. It's about understanding that they're meaningful, they're achieving things, right? So actually when it's busier, people are happier, they have less burnout than when it's not happening and they feel the drag, right? So motivating that does work. The rest, I think you do need to have some word of balance. At the end of the day, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But I do see these days, entrepreneurs starting because they think it's an amazing lifestyle. It's bloody tough. I would not recommend it to anyone. The first year and a half, it's blood, sweat, and tears. There's no secret. It's just hard work, grit. And you need to have luck, and you need to have momentum, and you need to have market. But not having the hard work, that's the basic.
You already raised a huge amount of money because you needed that, growth really rapid growth. Maybe you could take us through each of the rounds kind of raised. I know that you began with kind of your own money invested, and maybe the last round was Series D, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe you could talk to us. What is the kind of selling point? Why did you do it?
I would say it's. I would not do it unless there's a compelling reason, right? I think you need to be very mindful when you raise capital. Founders look at it and they think it's a badge of honor. It's something you define your success. It's not. It's really, sometimes a drag because you're not getting money. Yeah? If someone gives you money and invests your money, they expect a big return. If it's early stage, they expect, if not 100x, at least 10, 20x, right? Even a later stage, they expect multiple return. So you need to make a plan to understand you can get there and also look at, can I achieve it? Because if you can't, don't raise it. It's because these, money you get, there's maybe some conditions and saying lick pref. Often you see large exits where the founding team doesn't get anything because, they were under the water. So you need to make that very conscious decision. Why in our case, last time we quite much bootstrapped. That was a very good outcome. In this case, we had some capital and invested ourselves. So that helped. But as well, you need to make a decision when a market shift is happening. You have only such a window of opportunity to become big. Then you need to choose I'm going to go now or not, right? The reality is every good idea, if the market's right and you feel it, in every country, there's someone doing it like you, right? And if you don't launch at that time, maybe if you win even your region, you're not going to win everywhere. And afterwards, to try to go global is really hard because there's existing competitors, localized competitors, very entrenched. And the only way then maybe you can do it is, buy them up and so on. And it's very much harder work. So when you see the momentum is there and you can do it, then, you need to raise a capital and go for it. But again, it's a personal decision. I think it's a decision also maybe easier if you have done it and it's not going to make or break your life. I think the first time you're more conservative. I think the first company, if we were to have failed, we took loans on our houses and so on. It probably meant that we need to work another 20 years to just pay back it. So there's a risk appetite, but when the momentum is there, you should actually go for it.
And maybe you could give us some practical maybe meanings. So the last round was quite big. And so what was the kind of initial value proposition for the investors and what did you use that money for?
Yeah, I think fundraising is a long time exercise as well. Right? So you don't go, you need to have a relationship. I think most of the investors I know them for a long time. And so you actually don't go raise. When you need it, it's way too late. So I think most round we get preempted. What does that mean? People already are tracking us and said, hey, look, why don't you do it? Let me, pen it down. And so I think in the last round was also during that 22 age, we did a round. It only took us 3 weeks to raise the round. So it's very important to build that relationship up front, right? I also see that with seasoned founders, they have all a great investor network. Early stage founders, they're very scared to share numbers and data. The best thing is make a list of all these investors, send them a monthly update, right? So that's how you really raise capital, right? People always say, how do you do that? You're not going to do that by suddenly showing 1 month or this year amazing results. It's more about showing consistency and growth, right? So even if you're an early stage founder, list up all the investors that could be interesting for you in your space, in that size, and send them every month an update. And it can be the good, the bad, yeah? But if you have momentum, I guarantee you, after 20 mails, and they can see the momentum and you feel the momentum, they will be the one knocking on your door. You're never going to be the one needing to call them. They will say, hey, man, I've been reading your updates, for the last year. I see what you're doing. I see what's not easy, but I saw how you can achieve these things. And, it's not magic because we saw the work. We really want to get in. And that's how you're going to raise these capital rounds, right?
Wow. I find this conversation fascinating. Yeah. And, to all of the, especially early stage founders, I feel like that's you've been an entrepreneur for how many, 24 years?
Because there's a difference between early stage and late stage. I think it's now easier for us. If you're late stage, your numbers tell the story. It's easy. You show the numbers. There's you can metric on it. If it's earlier stage, it's very much a story. So you need to bring that side of it. You need to be convincing, right?
Wow. So tell me about your work now. So as I know, you're partially based in New York and in Belgium. Tell us, what is the difference between Belgium mindset and the US?
Look, I live between New York, London, and Belgium. I think we're, especially in the US, the mindset is way different, right? Especially in this time where, there's a new wind and you feel people, everything is possible. Everything is bigger. I think the mindset is let's go for it first. And if it fails, at least we try it. And I think in Belgium, it's very much, what if we fail? Yeah. They don't start with the most positive outlook. They start actually with a negative outlook. And that's, again, similar to, the story about getting out of your comfort zone. You're first going to say, oh, I can't do it. If I apply, maybe they don't accept me, or did I lie on the application? I didn't do it. And so you stop yourself before even you start, right? And we have a motto, one of the company values is shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you land among the stars. And why is that? Sometimes we set very ambitious targets. And, especially young people, they don't know what they can't achieve. They can actually they get to 90% of crazy stuff. And maybe it's not 100%, but 90% of crazy stuff, if we were to ask upfront to someone seasoned, they say, hey, you can only get to 10, 20%. So, just push the boundaries and try it. And that mindset, especially in the US, going for it, it's okay if you fail. It's better to have taken that chance than not tried at all. It's something that is important. And second, I think in the US, the deals and customers are bigger, right? You can't forget that, Europe still is very fragmented as a market. If we say here in Europe, well, we signed an enterprise customer chain, it's maybe 250, 500 location chain, right? It's big. I don't think you even have that in Belgium, but it's in Germany and UK. If you say in the US, I signed an enterprise chain, it's 5,000 locations, right? Because it's over a continent instead of a country. So the scale of what you can do with the resources is way bigger. So the opportunity of growth, and because people are bullish, is astounding.
And how do you sell in the US versus Europe? Is the approach different?
It's different. I think there are still a lot of partners, but in the US it's more relationship and people buy from people. So it's really about making sure that you can connect with there. Very simple story. In Europe, I think if we sign enterprise deal, the CEO of that company would not want to meet me. Don't care. It's like my team does it and so on. I think in the US, even if it's a mid-sized deal, they always want to see the CEO, want to have a chat with me to see, where I see as vision, how, transparent I am, or how loyal or, trustworthy I am. So the difference is quite big. Here, they don't care, right? And so you can see the clear distinction. They're buying from other people, where here it's more maybe, number-driven, and they trust their teams.
Wow. And if we feel the kind of the difference of the China, US, Europe, right now we live in extremely interesting times with AI kind of competition between those kind of states. And, I think a few days ago, there was an AI summit in France. So as if Europe is starting to climb up this technological ladder, but still, US is dominant now. What are your thoughts? Is US going to stay the dominant technological power in the AI era?
I think they are doing a lot of investment, right? I think, the investment there is bigger. There's a lot of more momentum and drive. I think that will catch up. China, on the other hand, I think they're resourceful, right? Because, sometimes you push people in a corner. They have no other ways. To find the cheaper ways of doing it will also make it happen. I think the more worrying side is indeed Europe. I think where, the difference is the overregulation. It's not one market. It's still, look, if you think about the AI summit, was very frowned France, right? It's not Europe. It was very France. And then I think, what about Germany? What about Benelux? What about, Spain? Or, are we sharing that, the result? And we should be proud as European that there's initiative. But the headline was AI Summit in Paris. It's about France, France, France. And so, you need to do that on almost, I think, a continental level because, the continent's already not very big, and then the countries are very, very small. If you don't put the resources and compete with each other in your own markets, it's going to be quite tough, where in the US, there's very much centralized capital, centralized effort to make the change, as well in China, where it's even more because it's more government controlled. But when they double down, they will double down massively, right? And these investments is needed.
Let's imagine that we have technological companies in Europe, for example, the founders. They use AI and they use it quite rapidly. What are their risk points? What are the benefit points of implementing it as much as quickly as you can?
I think the risk point is indeed, what happens if misuse of these data as well. If you make a lot of decision powers and these AI still sometimes hallucinate and make wrong decisions. So that could have a big impact without you knowing it. I think it's quite scary once you start having algorithm that acts on its own and you can't verify it. If that's, in our space, it could be, manipulating menu prices, but, it could be that it's complete off. And suddenly a restaurant lose a lot of revenue, and if it's not checked, it could be a issue. That being said, I think the downside doesn't outweigh the positive side, right? I think on every aspect in the company, from developers coding to support to sales, they need to use these tools. And I implore people to adopt it quicker than later, because I think even in developers community, you have that intrinsic worry, what if that takes my job? Well, it will take your job. So you better know how to use it and increase your productivity by 200-300%, because if you don't adopt and go with it, the outcome is going to be worse, right? So adopt it and try to do more with it. I think that's the key, right?
One of the founders of SuperNova, Jürgen Ingels, is also on your board. Yeah. Let's imagine that none of your board members are listening now to this podcast. Do investors actually bring value to the company?
The honest answer, little bit. Yeah, I think I think it's fine to say that, because most investors will say, hey, look, this value add thing to a certain extent. I think Jürgen actually does a lot of work, but more on the finance side. He runs an audit committee, so he does the digging. I think average investor you get on, I think where you need to see where they can help is, one, help you with network, right? They know people, they can introduce people. And if they have a good track record, they can help open doors a lot. That helps. That's really number one. Two, because of that network, maybe they know good people that you could hire and so on. And then three, I think it's really they will have a feeling on the macroeconomic trends, right? That being said, at the end of the day, US founders still need to make the decision, but they can feed you what the market is feeling, right? I think beyond that, unless it's a VC fund or investor that have operated themselves, it's very hard for them to tell you what to do, because not one company is run textbook-wise. I can tell you textbook-wise what you need to do, but the reality is very, very different. And so, I think beside these things, it's hard for investors to bring value. Of course, you need them because they bring the capital. Without the capital, you can't grow your company.
Let's talk about the going public. You went public with your last company. What is the kind of intrinsic value of going public? And I just listened to a podcast with founder of Odoo, Fabian, and he told that he will never make an IPO because there comes significant disadvantages of making an IPO. What stage do you feel that the company should make an IPO? What stage should they raise aggressively from public?
Well, IPO is similar to normally a private round. There's not really a difference these days. It's also about capital raise. I would say you would, and look, before it was, hey, you need to give liquidity to investors and early employees. I get that. But these days, you can do it perfectly in private mode, where you can raise some capital, do some private secondaries, and that gives liquidity to everyone. Less than frequent, but still have a normal interval. I think the reason why you still could want to do a public is, at certain moments, you want to make sure that, it's indeed also a multi-generational thing, right? Unless if you stay private, maybe, you need your kids to follow up and so on. It becomes more a family business. It's amazing. But I think at a certain moment, if you want to excel, maybe you need to bring other leadership in. You need to bring, that growth side, in, and being public will allow you to do that, right? It will set you up for, a more fragmented shareholdership, but as well can allow you in the public eyes grow in different ways and grow like that as well. I think the choice is depending on the founder. It also depends if you like the scrutiny or not, if you are open-minded and transparent, if you're operating already in a quarterly cadence or not, right? The downside, of course, of being public is, you have a lot of short-term requirements. And I agree with that, where, you're looking at quarterly performance instead of long-term yearly performance. And you can't, you need to be a strong founder, even if you're public, to don't drop the eyes and focus on the long-term game, right? It's not just this quarter. You need to think about what's going to happen next year or 2 years. If you only focus on the short term, you're going to lose anyways.
If you think about your CEO-ship, what is one thing that you feel is really, really great that you do? And maybe one thing that you feel that you still need to improve?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of improvement that I need. I think I can be inspirational. I think I'm doing good, and I can set a vision, keep the team motivated, and so on. Where I still need to work on is, as an entrepreneur, maybe less the manager side, I can sometimes be very direct, and I can sometimes, dig into the details. And, part of, in that function, sometimes you need to do that, but other times you need to learn to let go. I think that's typical for entrepreneur. We're control freaks, right? But you can't be always a control freak. Sometimes you need to let the team make the right decisions, and then, trust the judgment. So that's something that, I think it's inherent for every entrepreneur. Learn to let go.
And if you would be a superhero, so I understand that your superpower would be inspiration. You would inspire the team, motivate the team, and so on.
Well, that's what they tell me. But I think my personal superhero, I can sleep well, because that's important, because I fly a lot. So if I get on a plane, I train myself. I don't know if you like the dog of Pavlov ring. So if the plane engine starts, I'll fall asleep. So I think that's my personal superhero. That gives a lot of sanity. But motivating the team and inspiring them, I think it's quite key. Yeah.
Wow. I think falling asleep is the best superpower that I heard.
100%.
Wow. That's quite important.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the motto inside Deliverect is shoot for the moon. And actually, it kind of combines with the motto of today's of this year's Supernova. Yeah. On that topic, what is your dream?
Well, I think, look, our motto is actually conquer the galaxy, because the last company we conquered the world. The dream is, for me, I love what we do for a restaurant. I want to help them to succeed. And the reason why is, if you think about it, especially in the hospitality restaurant sector, these restaurants are the glue of a society, right? If you're a student, if you're immigrants, if you're, struggling, what do you do as first job to make a living, to first, thing to get in society? You go work in a restaurant. Can be a waiter, can be a dishwasher, can be, a chef, and so on. And so helping them succeed, especially in this age where everything is super digitalized, where they are not so digitalized, is crucial, right? And so that's what I want to do. I have done for the last 20 years, and I want to continue that. And look, I think today we're at 60,000, locations. I hope one day we have a couple 100,000 locations around the world, right? So
your superpower is indeed motivation. So what is one thing that I have not asked you today that you wish I would have asked?
Well, that's a curveball. That's a good question.
A topic, an idea?
Maybe lessons learned. What would you have done differently? I think that's always good for people. Like, we do scale quickly, but we think we sometimes made the mistakes. I think most of the times we got it right. I think a couple things were, maybe differently, as especially when you're fast scaling, making sure you have really the infrastructure. I think we were a bit late sometimes in hiring, learning, and developing people. We had a great culture, but setting up the process. And then secondly is, sometimes wait. I think it's a lesson for me, always, timing wise, but then sometimes you can also wait. You have the time. So, and the reason why is, as entrepreneur, we have a very strong sense of urgency. We want to always do very quick things, but sometimes have the patience, wait it out. Look at the markets, look at what's happening before you make the changes. Right, take your time.
That's a really nice lesson. And the last question: what is the advice you wish you would have been given when you were 19?
I would not say given. I think my father pushed me quite well. It would be the same advice if I go back. Is the pushing works. Really try to get out of your comfort zone and just do it. Don't limit yourself in what you think you can't do. You have no idea what you actually can. So learn to get out of your comfort zone. Try it, and look, it's the best reward. It's not what other people say about you. If you can achieve something that you didn't believe you can, and you succeed, then it becomes a wow moment for yourself. And that unlocks a lot of things that can propel you in your life.
Fantastic. Zhong, thank you so much for this conversation. You can already see on the background, your employees are starting to have a lunch. So it also, goes with your notion of saying about the culture. So Deliverect will be at Supernova 2025. That will happen on the 27th and the 28th of March in Antwerp, Belgium. So if you want to, learn about Deliverect or other companies from throughout the world, come to Supernova, and hopefully to see you there. Thank you so much, Zhong.
Thank you for having me.